the tolerance is required based on how somebody is experiencing something. And that's why what happens is some things may be very easy to tolerate for some people. And some things may be very difficult. The same thing may be difficult for someone else to tolerate. Mm-hmm. So I said the first, I'll talk about tolerance as an explanation. So broadly speaking, when there is something unpleasant and we don't want to react disproportionately to that. So basically, I gave this diagram. We talked about how something external is happening. So now why is it unpleasant? Something unpleasant is happening to us. Now I talked about the unpleasant perception comes from the external contact with the internal. The external contact with the body and the mind. But when it comes, now what will be felt as unpleasant will be different for different people. Now when it is felt, when that unpleasant comes up, there could be either a disproportionate response or a proportionate or an appropriate response. So the disproportionate response is what we call as intolerance. Inability to tolerate. This is tolerance. So when something happens inside us, so if this is the person who is experiencing something over here. So when the person is experiencing something, they experience something unpleasant, and then when they're experiencing something unpleasant, they have to respond. How do they respond to it? If it's disproportionate, then that's considered that the person lacks tolerance. If it's proportionate, so if somebody speaks something very provocative, and that person remains very calm, and say, okay, this person is a tolerant person. That's the idea of tolerance. So now, how does one go about exhibiting tolerance? That's what the next part we'll talk about. But tolerance means that something unpleasant comes, but our response is a measured response, is an appropriate response. Like some people say, you go off the handle. Some people just go out of control. So now, I'll just add one more point to the explanation of tolerance. I said that it is not just for negatives, but it is also for positives. So Krishna specifically talks about tolerating the positive in 523, where he talks about temptations. He says, Shaknoti haiva yah sodhum prak sharir vimokshanat kama krodhod bhavam vegam sayuktah sasukhi naraha. So basically, he says that in life, we will all experience temptations. We'll all get something which is enjoyable. And we should not get carried away by that. So he's telling, specifically he's talking in terms of samsparsha jab hoga, same word he uses over there in 522, that he says that just by the contact of the senses and sense objects, certain desires will come. But we don't get carried away by those desires. We tolerate them. So that means it could be unpleasant or it could be pleasant also. So for example, with respect to tolerance, we could say some people are sweet talkers. That means they talk in such a way that people just start trusting them. Oh, this was a nice person, just a trustworthy person. But sometimes these people may be deceptive. They may be sweet talkers. They may have a very sweet tongue, but they may have a sharp heart. They're out to manipulate. So then we should not get carried away by their sweet words. So that is also a form of tolerance. So tolerating the unpleasant is generally what we talk about. But tolerating the pleasant means, again, not getting carried away by that. Somebody says, okay, you invest your money and, I have done this for so many people and in 1 year, you can get 10 times the return. Okay. I'll give all my bank balance to you right away. Hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. So tolerate. So tolerance can also be for the pleasant. Okay. So any questions about tolerance till now? Okay. So now let's talk about the the gunas. Which are the three gunas? Yes. So if you could, sattva, rajas, and tamas. In general, wherever Shastric context is there, I prefer to use the Sanskrit words. Because what is happening is, the meanings of the words are changing. And especially in today's world, the word passion has become very positive. Like, discover your passion. Find out what is your passion in life. And when people use that, they use it in a very positive sense. It's almost like, when people use the word passion today, it's like, find out your varna dharma. It's like that. What is your calling? So, I am very passionate about this. So the idea, the word passion, its meaning has changed now. In the past, there was some negative connotation to it. Sometimes it is there also, but it's not much more. Not so much. And the meanings of words change over time. During Prabhupada's time, Prabhupada would frequently use the word cult. The cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spreading all over the world. Now, if somebody asks us, so do you belong to a cult? What will you say? No, of course not. We won't say that. Because now the word cult has acquired a negative connotation. So the meaning that people associate with is with certain words. We may have particular meaning, but people associate some other meaning with it. So sattva, rajas, tamas. Now each of these three modes, we won't go too much into the modes, but the modes, broadly we can say, they are subtle forces that shape our behavior. So it's almost like the modes are many things, but if you consider a car has gears. You know, gears, when in the first gear the car may move up a steep hill, in another gear it may move very fast. So the gears determine the way the car operates. So once you put a car in a particular gear, it will move that way. So the modes are like that. Once we go into a particular mode, we tend to function in a particular way. We can change it. Like somebody can drive on a flat road in the first gear also. But that's not the optimum way to function. So the idea is, the gears are, the modes are particular ways in which our body-mind machine functions. Now we could talk about the modes in many different ways, but broadly speaking, I will talk about the modes, the gunas, in terms of power, or rather our estimation of our power. See, we all have, or we can say a more familiar word is control. See, we all have a certain level of control over things. So generally speaking, in tamas, we underestimate our power to control. Oh, nothing is in my control. I am helpless. I am powerless. I am just useless. In tamas, we underestimate our power to control. Now in rajas, what do? Overestimate. So in tamas, we think nothing is in my control. In rajas, everything is in my control. So now, generally speaking, most people, they keep oscillating between rajas and tamas. So there is a kind of mental health challenge called manic depressive personality. Manic depressive means, when they are manic, they have such energy, it seems like they will shake the whole world up. And then after some time they become so depressed that you have to shake their bed and still they don't come out of the bed. Yes, everything is pointless. What is the use of getting out of the bed also? So this manic depressive is a combination of heavy rajas and a combination of heavy tamas. So either we estimate that it's too much in our control or there's too little in our control. Now we all have control over some things. So sattva is in between. We more or less, there is an accurate estimate of what is in my control and what is beyond my control. And now if we go beyond this to Shuddha Sattva, there will be the focus at everything is in God's control. Not just that this is not in my control, this is my own control. That ultimately This whole thing has been arranged by God. Some things in my control, something not in my control. The focus goes more on God. So we could go further into the modes, but let's focus right now on the principle of tolerance. Now, when we are trying to tolerate, I just met one devotee from Nepal, and they're telling that slowly China is entering more and more into Nepal and taking away Nepal's territory. They're claiming it to be our own. There's, if you know, between India and Northeast, there is a small passageway which links India to the Northeast. That is, geographically they call it the chicken's neck. What is the idea is that if that can be broken, then if somehow China takes control of that, then India can be cut off from those other states, and then China can take it over. So they're slowly trying to encroach over there. So the point is that Nepal or Bhutan, for example, these are very small countries as compared to China. So now if China starts attacking Nepal or Bhutan and start taking some country, some territory, and say Nepal says, we tolerate you, China. Well, what option do you have? Isn't it? There's nothing you can do at that time. Isn't it? So the idea is, in Tamoguna, tolerance, it can come in various levels. So intolerance in tamas comes simply from helplessness. There's nothing I can do about it. So now somebody can say, nobody's helpless. Say somebody may tolerate because they have no options. And okay, now we all have to acknowledge that there are times in our lives when we don't have any options. And that is fair enough. But if that is the only thing we are focusing on, I'm helpless, I can't do anything about it. So then that is not a very positive feeling. So when tolerance arises from helplessness, quite often the result of this is resentfulness. We feel resentful, we feel angry. So when somebody is tolerating just because they can't do anything about it, they feel sorry for themselves, they feel self-pity, they feel resentful. And this kind of tolerance is not a very healthy kind of tolerance. It is tolerating because you can't do anything. And in one sense, you could say that if somebody has a bad boss in the office and they just have to have work over there, they don't have any options, so they tolerate. But if their tolerance is tamasic, then what will happen is they will come home and take it out on their family. They can't yell at their boss, but they will come home and yell at their family. So now there is a saying in English, hurt people. So people who are hurt, they go about hurting others. So while this is understandable, this is not desirable. Like somebody, we all have the experience that somebody yells at us. We have done nothing, or we have done something small, they're yelling at us. You say, maybe something happened. Like you mentioned one of the points is we can tolerate by understanding others' conditionings. So it's not just their conditionings, it's also understanding their conditions. That, okay, what condition are they coming from? So this is one motive to tolerate, but it's not a very sustainable motive. When we tolerate out of a feeling of helplessness, then we will either, there is, generally in Tamoguna, people don't explode, they implode. Explode is, you yell at others. Implode is, the person collapses into themselves. They just eventually become depressed, they become frustrated. In general, anger, when it's directed outward, it becomes aggression. It's directed out, but when it's directed inward, it becomes depression. So when people get depressed, basically what is happening is, this didn't work in my life, and that didn't work in my life, and that didn't happen, and this person didn't stay true to their promise, this person betrayed me, I made a mess of things. So all those things are going on in their mind, and they just beat themselves up. It's like a movie, it's a dark movie going on constantly. So in tamas, somebody is tolerating, that's okay, at least they are not overreacting in one sense. But it cannot be sustained for very long. Now, we all probably can think of situations where we have tolerated because we just don't have any alternatives. And as I said, it's not a completely undesirable thing. It is just that this is unsustainable. We won't be able to sustain this for very long. Now in Rajas, in general, it's very difficult to tolerate when somebody is in Rajoguna. Because Rajoguna, as I said, is associated with, I have so much power, I have so much control. Now, in Rajoguna, if somebody tolerates, it is primarily as a tactic. Tactic means what? Right now I'm not strong enough, so I will tolerate. But in future, when I get power, I will pay you back for everything you have done to me. So, in Tamoguna, one becomes resentful. In Rajoguna, one becomes revengeful. So the idea is, okay, I am not reacting right now. I am not doing anything. But internally, that person is burning, and just waiting for an opportunity to explode. So so in one sense, there is anger and there is hate. Are the two the same? What do you think? No? Which is worse? Hate. Now, what do you think is the difference between anger and hate?
Anger can be momentary, hate can be long term.
Yes, anger is momentary, short term. Any other difference?
Anger is more of an external somewhere, hate remains.
Hate can be inside also. Yes, see, anger, it's generally, if somebody is angry, unless they're very good at concealing it, some amount of anger is seen. But somebody can be hateful and they may not show it at all. So anger is more, you could say, it's hot-headed, it's visible. Hatred can be invisible. But more importantly, anger is hot-headed. The person is impulsive. But hate is cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means what? The person is very calculative. I'll wait for the right time. Until that time, I may appear as if I'm your very best friend. And then, when I have the opportunity, I'll stab you. So, a tolerance in Rajoguna, even a Rajasic person can tolerate. But their idea is that I want to get back at you in the future. I will wait for that opportunity. So, when Duryodhan was insulted, he felt insulted when he slipped and fell. So at that time, now everyone laughed at him and he felt. He didn't retaliate at them at that time. But then, in the gambling match, he got back at them. Now what happens is, when it's in Rajoguna, it is Rajasic, Tamasic both, but it is Rajoguna, what happens is, when there is hate or anger, both of them similar, but it's disproportionate completely. Okay, you fell down and somebody laughed at it. That's not the best thing to do. But then, for that, to disrobe a woman in public, it's like some mosquito bit you in a house and you want to blow up the whole house with an atom bomb. It's totally disproportionate. So in Rajoguna, somebody may tolerate. In fact, we can say that it's not even tolerance, it's just like a tactical silence at that time. But sometimes people may seem to tolerate, but they're waiting, when will I get back to you? And both of these kinds of tolerance are not healthy. They are neither good for our emotional health, and certainly they're not good for our spiritual health. These won't help us to grow spiritually. So when Krishna is telling Arjuna to tolerate, it is at the very least at the level of sattva. In sattva, when we tolerate, it is not because we are helpless, it is not just because we are tactical, it is based on intelligence. It is based on wisdom. And So what does it mean it is based on intelligence or wisdom? So one point of, in fact, Krishna is giving 2 points of wisdom over here. In that same verse, he says, these are temporary. They will come and they will go. They will come and they will go. And he's saying, also, if you really understand you're a soul, this is external. This has nothing to do with the soul. So basically, one of the things which we can phrase this in tolerance based on intelligence is that often our emotions are not just temporary, they are reversible. Reversible means what? Today I feel like I hate this person. But after a day or two, we find that, okay, nothing so bad about it, isn't it? So it is best that our reversible emotions don't lead us to irreversible actions. That our emotions, they come, we're not denying the emotions, but reversible emotions should not lead to irreversible actions. Sometimes we get angry and we speak words that maybe that person may never forget. We say, you should forget it, I didn't mean it. But those words play and replay in the heart. So maybe if the other person is angry, if I'm angry, if I'm also getting angry, better walk away from there. I'm going to step away, and otherwise, we will go so far that we'll never be able to come back from here. So, based on reversible emotions, we don't take irreversible actions. That is wisdom. Wisdom is what? The wisdom here is, these situations are there. The situations will come, they will go. The emotions, they will come, they will go. Now, this is what Krishna is saying. Yes, for Arjuna, you have to fight against Bhishma and Drona. That is difficult for you. But you're not fighting against Bhishma and Drona. You are fighting against Duryodhana and Dushasana. They have caused the war. And Bhishma and Drona just happened to be on their side. That is unfortunate. But if you consider that Bhishma and Drona are the people I have to fight against, and if you don't fight against them, all that is going to happen is Dushasana and Duryodhana will have unchallenged power. And they will continue to do horrible things, not just to you and your family, but to the whole of society. And you by nature, Arjuna, are a protector. Kshatriya is basically a protector. And you are a protector. And in future, now you may say, oh, I can't fight, I can't tolerate this fighting, so I'll renounce the world. But in future, when you hear about the atrocities that they are performing, then the protector within you will rise again. But then if you renounce the world, then again for you to act as Kshatriya will be inappropriate. So yes, so in every situation, so in wisdom, when you talk about wisdom, what happens is, if we are having the vision of wisdom, then broadly, we can see that in every situation, there might be something undesirable, but there is something desirable also. And it is also possible that in the future, the undesirable may become smaller and the desirable may become bigger. So, if a student doesn't like to study, a person doesn't like to study, okay, this is so difficult. Yeah, it is difficult. But if you learn it, you gain some familiarity, some mastery over the subject, then there is so much more you can do. Then it won't be undesirable in the future. So the idea is that in this case, tolerance is based on wisdom. And Krishna, if you see, in the verse for tolerance is, if you consider chapter 2, 13, 14, 15. So 14th verse is about tolerance, what we recited just now. Tam sthitiksha bharata. What is the previous verse? Dehinosmin yatha dehe. So that is actually wisdom. That actually we are spiritual beings. In fact, it is not just saying we are spiritual beings, it is saying that we are the unchanging spiritual being within the changing material body. So the whole idea of reversible emotions and irreversible. So there is knowledge that there is something which is changing, there is something which is unchanging. And you are the unchanging. Now, what is the verse that comes after this? Yeah, that yam hi na vyathayantete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrudatvaya kalpate. Yam hi na vyathayantete. One, vyathayante is agitated, one who is not disturbed. Yam hi na vyathayantete purusham purusharshabha. That Purusha who can tolerate this. In fact, Krishna is actually calling upon Arjuna. You are not an ordinary person. Yes, it's difficult for people to tolerate. But Purusha Rishabha, you are the bull among men. See, in the Vedic tradition, the lion or the tiger was considered to be the most powerful among wild animals, and the bull was considered to be the most powerful among domestic animals. So often, people were respectably referred to as Rishabha, Purusha Rishabha. So Purusham Purusha Rishabha. Samadukha Sukham Dhiram. If you can say Dhira. Where did the word Dhira come? Yes, 2 verses before. Dhiras Tatra Namuhyati. So Samadukha Sukham Dhiram. If you can do that, Sa Amrutatvaya Kalpate. Amrutatva is immortality. It is basically what Krishna is saying is tolerance is a means to transcendence. Amrutattva is immortality. So we attain the domain of immortality where the physical world with its duality is no longer is there. So this is the tolerance that is being talked about over here. Tolerance based on wisdom. That even in this unpleasant, undesirable situation, there is something good. Even if it's small right now, let me focus on the good, and in the future, something far better will come up. Something far bigger, something far better will come up. So, this kind of tolerance is where, for example, Dhritarashtra, he was repeatedly neglecting the advice of Vidura. But Vidura did not abandon Dhritarashtra. Now, sometimes what happens is, when we are hearing a pastime, we focus only on one aspect of the pastime. Let's say Vidura came and spoke strong words of Dhritarashtra and enlightened him. And this is how a sadhu's strong words cut. And they remove people's attachments. Yes, there is truth through that. But if you look at it, Vidura was speaking throughout his life. And previously those words didn't have much impact. In fact, at one time, Dhritarashtra, after the gambling match, when everything happened and they went out to the forest, the Pandavas went out. Dhritarashtra could not sleep. He remembered how Bhima had taken a vow, I will break Duryodhana's thigh. I will rip off Dushasana's hand and drink his blood. And all those kind of terrible vows. So he called Vidura in the middle of the night. He said, I'm not able to sleep. Please advise me how there can be auspiciousness for my sons. And Vidura said, there is no hope for auspiciousness for your sons now. What they have done is something which is unpardonable. The only hope you have right now is that you have Duryodhana and Dushasana arrested. And you take them to the forest and throw them at the feet of the Pandavas. If the Pandavas forgive, then there is some chance. Now, this was not what Dhritarashtra wanted to hear. He said, now it is confirmed the suspicion that I always had. You are always partial to the sons of Pandu, and you are always against my sons. I have no desire for your advice anymore. Go wherever you like. And Vidura left the palace. And Vidura actually went out into the forest to be with the Pandavas. And initially when Bhima saw Vidura coming, he said, now what has he come to ask for us? Because previously it was Vidura who had been sent to invite the Pandavas for the gambling match. So he said, what has he come for? So he says, Yudhishthira said, wait. And then Vidura told what had happened. He said, can I stay with you in the forest? He says, we will be delighted to have your association and your guidance. Yudhishthira remembered that it was Vidura who had warned them about the Lakshagraha, that there was a conspiracy over there. So then the next morning, after Dhritarashtra woke up, he says, what have I done? Vidura was always my well-wisher. Why did I send him away? So he sent Sanjay as a messenger. Please, Vidura, come back. And then Vidura heard about it and Vidura came back. So we say, why did Vidura have to take so much? Why did Vidura, in one sense he was humiliated, but Vidura tolerated it. Because Vidura had some hope that Dhritarashtra could be delivered. And that is why eventually also, again when Duryodhana insulted him, at that time it was very difficult. Because in traditional society means we don't speak rudely to, at least to our elders. Now, Vidura was like a father figure for Duryodhana. And when he viciously insulted him, calling into question his parentage and his loyalty, and Duryodhana's words hurt Vidura, he said. Now you son of Katva, why are you here? Who asked you to be here? You are like a traitor. You are working for the enemy's interest. Get out of here with nothing except your breath. And now Duryodhana's words hurt him. But what hurt Vidura the most was Dhritarashtra's silence. See, we all will be criticized in life. But the harshest words of our critics don't hurt as much as the silence of our friends. Somebody should defend me. If nobody defends me, but even then, although Vidura was hurt, Vidura left. And we know in the Ramayana there is Vibhishan, who also has a similar situation. Vibhishan went over to the to Ram's side. Vidura did not go over to the Pandava side. Vidura simply went to a forest. And then many years later, Vidura came back. And that was the time when Vidura spoke words which had an impact. Because by that time, the Duryodhana and all the sons of Dhritarashtra were killed. So as long as the attachment was very strong, and there was hope of fulfilling that attachment, then Dhritarashtra was not ready to listen. So, but now Dhritarashtra was ready to listen. And the words had an impact. So basically, when Vidura tolerated, so now I'm going to move to the last part of the session. I said, we'll talk about the motive for tolerance. So tolerance has two distinct aspects to it. First is to keep big things big. And then to keep small things small. Now we could say this is 1 and 2, but both of them go together. If we're keeping the big thing big, we can keep the small thing small. If we're keeping the small thing small, we can keep the big thing big. So this is where intelligence is required. Intelligence is to know what are the big things for us and what are the small things for us. So once we understand, so for Vidura, the big thing was his relationship with Dhritarashtra. He wanted to help Dhritarashtra. And the difference was, he had some hope that Dhritarashtra could be delivered. The difference from Vibhishan's case. In Vibhishan's case, Vibhishan's brother was the active villain, was the main instigating villain. Ravana was the completely dark person. In Vidura's case, his brother was definitely not no hero, but he was more like a passive villain. He was under the spell of Duryodhana. And once he came out of the spell of that attachment, he saw there was some good in him. So basically, if we are to tolerate, we need to be able to tolerate based on understanding what is the big thing for us and what is the small thing for us. So based on this understanding, we may choose certain courses of action. Now, tolerance, if we understand this particular aspect of tolerance, it means to keep the big things big and keep the small things small. I was in New Zealand, and I gave a class on tolerance. And there's one devotee who, very intelligent devotee, he always comes and attends my classes there and asks us intelligent questions. And then he also gives some thoughtful feedback about the classes. So this time that devotee was sitting way behind. And then after that, he came to meet me. He says, Prabhu, your class was very good. I said, okay, what did you like? He said, normally, he said, I get a lot of intellectual stimulus from your class. But today, I got a practical opportunity to apply the class also. I said, no, my class was on tolerance. So I was thinking, is he meaning that you have to tolerate my class? So he saw my facial expression. He said, no, that was not the point. He said, I was sitting behind. I came a little late. And when I was sitting behind, the person next to me was constantly talking on phone. And then I was getting irritated. I wanted to focus on the class. And I was just not able to focus because I was talking on the phone. But then I thought, this is an opportunity for me to tolerate. So that's how I was able to apply the class during the class. I said, that is not tolerance. That is impotence. Why? Say, for example, if you are coming for a class, say if you have to sit on the floor and maybe you're not very comfortable sitting on the floor. But then, okay, the class is not going to be for 6 hours, it's for 1 hour. We can tolerate sitting on the floor for 1 hour. The big thing is what? You want to hear the class, understand the wisdom. The small thing is, okay, the physical comfort is not there. But if we come for a class and we are not able to hear the class only because somebody else is chit-chatting something else, then what is happening is, the big thing we are not able to do. The big thing there is hearing. So tolerating that is actually not tolerance. In the sense, it is not going to lead to any positive fruit. So for us, we need to be clear what is the big thing and the small thing. So in that case, tolerance could mean not that we just let that person do whatever they want. Okay, if we can't change that person, then we tolerate such people will be there, but I don't have to sit next to such a person, sit next to such a person. I can go and sit somewhere else. Or I can request that person, can you go out and talk? Or I can inform some authority, maybe they'll tell someone. So tolerance is, it is not equivalent to being passive. It is not passivity. Now sometimes we may, tolerance is a conscious choice. And that choice may be sometimes to do nothing and sometimes to do something. So if we equate tolerance with passivity, then that will only make us impotent. If we equate it is impotence, and impotence is not tolerance. So we want to pursue something higher, and to pursue something higher, we will tolerate something which is undesirable, but we want to focus on something higher. So it's a conscious choice of what is, in this situation, what is the big thing for me, what is the small thing for me, and how can I pursue the big thing, and for that, let me tolerate the small thing. When Prabhupada went to America, there was this idea that people would thought that the hippies and the people in the counterculture, they thought that by taking drugs, we will go high, we will become spiritual. So there was this drug called LSD which people would take. Now LSD is the name of a chemical, but they had re-Christianed it. League of Spiritual, what was it? LSD Discovery. So their idea was that anybody who takes LSD joins this League of Spiritual Discovery. And then after taking LSD, when people just have some kind of visions, or they would just go crazy and they would speak. So whatever they would speak, when people would be high on LSD, they would be called as LSD saints. LSD saints means, they are speaking something from a profound vision. And the idea was nobody should interfere with them. People should let them do what they want. Sometimes in India, in some temples of the goddess, you might see some people just start whirling like a dervish, just going round and round and round. And the idea is, they say the goddess has possessed this person. And then the idea is, don't stop this person, let them do what they want. If the goddess wants to dance, something like that. So they had this idea that these people are LSD saints and nobody should interfere with them. So in the early days in New York and especially in San Francisco, see, right from the beginning of our movement, there have always been liberals and conservatives. So the New York center was relatively much more conservative. The devotees who were there were much more serious. But the devotees who went to San Francisco, they were interested in doing big things more. Reaching a lot of people, reaching VIPs, doing big events. They were not so strict about the rules. They were a little more liberal. And Prabhupada accommodated both of them in his own way. He encouraged both of them. So the San Francisco center was much more liberal. And there, when Prabhupada came to San Francisco, there this whole idea of LSD saints was all there. So when Prabhupada would give a class in the morning, people would come and they would participate in the kirtan, and Prabhupada would start a class. In the middle of the class, somebody start speaking. And Prabhupada would look at the disciples, stop them. And the disciples said, no, we cannot stop them. It will create a scandal in the whole Haight-Ashbury area. You stopped LSD saint, you silenced him. So you cannot do that. So suddenly Prabhupada is speaking something serious philosophy and somebody just starts speaking crazily. And Prabhupada would just have to tolerate that. So Prabhupada would tolerate that. The person would speak for a few minutes, the person would go on for a long time. So then what would happen is, even other people also, if this person is speaking something sensible, they would hear. But if there's just incoherent rants are there, then people will also say, okay, you become silent now. People will also lose steam. They didn't have anything to speak. So my point is, Prabhupada would tolerate that. Now, 10 years down the line, if there had been a serious devotee to the Bhagavatam class and suddenly somebody would start speaking in the middle of a class, would Prabhupada have tolerated that? No. Now, that means, in this case, it's according to time, place, circumstance. So there, it was all new people who were just getting them to appreciate Krishna and Krishna Bhakti. That was what is important. So Prabhupada was tolerant. We know that incident when Prabhupada was in 22nd Avenue, and one person, a hippie came, and he walked right into the classroom, and he went behind to if you go even now to 22nd Avenue, there's a speaker sits over here, and next to that, there is one restroom over there. That person went into the restroom, and he put some tissue paper over there. And he took out the tissue paper, he put it there, and he came back. And Prabhupada, just see, this service attitude is natural to everyone. We all have a desire to serve. So Prabhupada did not get angry. Prabhupada did not get disturbed by that. Prabhupada saw that as an opportunity. So for him, the big thing was not just conveying the specific philosophical point, not just the flow of the class. That's important, no doubt. But the big point was to illustrate the principles of Krishna consciousness in action. And thus, he was able to, the disturbance was an annoying thing, but he was able to keep it small. So tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on the big things. Now, what is a big thing and what is a small thing? That is something which we have to use our intelligence to understand. And that's why I'll conclude with this point. You mentioned about tolerating the unbearable. See, unbearable, now there's a different meanings could be assigned to the word which is unbearable. But say if somebody is feeling so hot, that somebody's trying to chant in the morning and it's extremely hot and they're sweating. And the only thing they're thinking about is how sweaty and how messy and how hot that is. Then okay. And if the big thing is to remember Krishna, the big thing is not just to endure the heat without complaining. Maybe find a fan, sit under a fan. If you want to go in AC, find AC. If you can't, okay. But our mind should not get caught in that thing which seems unbearable to us. So the point is, our mind should be free to focus on something higher. So there are situations when we may take action, we may take even strong action. But it is not impulsive action. You did this to me, so I'll do this to you. No, this is what I want to do in my life, and you are coming in the way for me for doing this. This is a big thing for me, that if you're coming in the way, then I am not getting back at you, but I am getting you out of my way. I want my way, I want to move forward in my way, and if you're coming in the way, I will not let you come in the way. So this is a devotee, when there's tolerance, it is we talked about how it is not resentful, it is not revengeful. It is more purposeful. The purpose is that I want to serve Krishna. I want to do something for assisting my Guru Maharaj, for assisting Srila Prabhupada. I want to do what is required. And therefore, for that purpose, you live with this. If I have to, I will live with this. So when we have that purpose in mind, then tolerance becomes it's not just something which internally we are feeling terrible and we are doing it, but rather we are remembering our higher purpose, the opportunity to serve the Lord. And that is how tolerance becomes much easier as compared to otherwise. So I'll summarize what we discussed about tolerance, broadly speaking. So I started by talking about when Krishna uses the word, we started with 2.14, tolerance. So the idea of tolerance was that basically there is something which is generally unpleasant. We discussed also it could be sometimes too much pleasant, too tempting. But when it comes up, we could have a reaction that is disproportionate. We want to avoid that. And we want to have a response that is appropriate. So now how do we determine what is appropriate? That was the whole discussion. So basically, Krishna gives a perspective that there is the body, there is the mind, and there is the soul. And through a contact with the external objects, there can be duality at the level of the body, at the level of the mind. So I talked about first what is the meaning of tolerance. So tolerance, in that sense, we discussed that what it means is that tolerance will have a universal or an objective and a subjective side to it. That some things we may find it difficult because they are difficult. But some things we may feel it is difficult because our body and mind are in a particular way. Then I talk about tolerance and the modes. That broadly speaking, the modes can be associated with our power of controllership. Tamas, we feel we have no control. In Rajas, we feel we have all control. And in Sattva, we estimate actually how much control do we have. So accordingly, tolerance, it can be in Tamas, it is largely because of a feeling of helplessness. I just have no options, so I'll tolerate. And that makes us eventually resentful. So this leads us to implode. We collapse within ourselves. People break down. If it is Rajas, then it is mostly tactical. Right now I'll tolerate, but then eventually I'll get back at you. So it will be revengeful. This is how people who tolerate, they explode eventually. So it is almost like, it's not so much explode out of anger, they explode out of hate. So hate is cold-blooded. And then Sattva, it is based on wisdom. It is based on intelligence. That, what is the wisdom? That there are reversible emotions. Let these reversible emotions not lead to irreversible actions. That these will come, they will stay for some time, but let me not do something which will be something which such that I cannot go back from that. And then, lastly, we discussed about the motive in Sattva Guna for tolerance. Tolerance basically means that we keep big things big and we keep small. So for that, we need the buddhi. We need to first understand what are the big things for us and what are the small things for us. Once we have understood that, then tolerance, it is not passivity. It is a conscious choice. It's a conscious decision. And that choice can range from no action to strong action. Strong action could be that I just move out of the situation. I'll try to fix that situation. But broadly speaking, If we see tolerance in this way, then that tolerance can actually take us closer to Krishna. That tolerance can help us find what is positive and build on that positive. So we discuss how Prabhupada's tolerance was ultimately for the purpose of, it is cultivating Krishna consciousness in him, in others. So it's purposeful. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Mataji, you have any comments, please? We have the mic, please. Will it go behind?
Haribol Prabhu, thank you so much. This made it so well understandable, how tolerance works. I was thinking, you spoke of tolerance in passion, which mostly based on anger. I was thinking, tolerance in passion is also something fruitive, isn't it? Because the nature of passion is to be fruitive. And so like somebody tolerates just to get something. As you said, it's sometimes tricky. Not just to get back at something, you just tolerate, but also because you want to get something. And so you tolerate things like people perform austerities, which requires a lot of tolerance, just to obtain a power or to obtain wealth or health even. So many things that people tolerate just because they are fruitive. They have a goal, but it's not a higher goal. It's a very selfish material goal. So isn't it like that also? It's not just anger,
Yes.
but it's also greed or the
Yes, that is
desire
true.
to obtain something.
Yes, definitely. It's a little subtle in the sense that while there's definitely Rajoguna over there is some amount of Sattva also over there. Because of it, they are able to pursue something higher. Like I say, nowadays, in the Western world, yoga is becoming very popular. Even in India, it's becoming popular. Now, most people who practice yoga, they want bhoga. Isn't it? They want to have fitter bodies, either just so that they can enjoy their senses, or maybe they can look more attractive so they can find a more attractive partner. Whatever it is. So it's a mundane goal completely. At the same time, they could be seeking that just by using Botox or so many other, they could be pumping chemicals into their body. So it's a Rajasic goal, but to some extent, they are pursuing it by a Sattvic means. So now we could look at the goal is Rajasic and we could condemn it. Or we could look at the means is Sattvic and appreciate it. Because they are seeking a Sattvic means, at least some Sattva Guna is there. And in the yoga circles, whenever I give talks in the West, slowly in India also, I find that people are a little reflective. People are a little emotionally aware, and they are open. May not be open directly to transcendence, but at least to some level of introspection, from which they can move towards spirituality. So they can be moved towards spirituality. So the point is that if somebody is pursuing something, there is a certain level of sattva, then their focus is more on the purpose. So it's a combination of sattva and rajas. In real life, the three modes, they are not that black and white. Because sometimes one aspect of a person's activity may be in sattva, another might be in rajas. So for example, somebody gives up eating meat. Now you can say adopting vegetarianism is a good thing. But they gave up eating meat because they got a heart attack and doctor told them you have to give it up. They still like to eat meat, but they like to live more. They like to be alive more. So it is not that they have come necessarily to any kind of spiritual enlightenment, or even they have developed some empathy for animals. So at one level, their vegetarianism is good because at least they become vegetarian. Another level, we can say they're still attached to their body and only for the body's sake they become vegetarian. So it is generally in Rajoguna, there is some purpose. It's fruitive. And generally that purpose is a material purpose. But that material purpose could also be pursued in different ways. So if somebody is choosing to discipline themselves and choosing to tolerate certain things, there is a certain level of sattva over there. Like the Kshatriyas, generally we say they are in Rajoguna, but the Kshatriyas have a certain level of sattva. That is why they will respect the Brahmana, that is why they will follow Shastra. So yes, it is. So I was talking about Rajoguna more in specific terms where people are revengeful. But as you rightly said, in Rajoguna also people can be purposeful. And the purpose could be materialistic. So for them, the big thing right now is I want to be alive. The small thing is I can't eat meat. Okay, I'll give it up. So they may tolerate over there also. So so in that sense, for us, tolerance is not just a means to get to a better material situation. Tolerance is a means to get to a better spiritual situation. We want to attain transcendence. Am I addressing your point, Mataji?
Yeah, it's good, it's good. In that sense, we could think maybe those who are revengeful and all, their passion is mixed with tamas.
Definitely, yes.
Those who are more like have a purpose, material purpose, you say it is mixed with goodness because at least they have the strength. And it is very much what the Vedas are using. They are using
True.
the passion and all and put it in a regulated way so that it is mixed with sattva and then
Yeah, it's
gradually
perfect.
it gets to knowledge.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you. I was just reading Chaitanya Shikshamrita. There, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that sometimes sadhakas may lump rajas and tamas together. But he says there's a world of difference. And rajas can sometimes be an antidote for the poison that is tamas. So I had read that long ago, but recently it struck me. Like, now I'm spending time in the West. Say, Indian parents, many of them may not be at all spiritual, but they may be rajasic. I want my child to become wealthy and famous and popular and well settled in life. But if their child falls sick, they will move heaven and earth to take care of their child. On the other hand, if the parent is tamasic, the parent is stoned on drugs, they don't even know that they have a child that exists. There's a world of difference between the two. And from this world's perspective, a rajasic parent is 100 times better than a tamasic parent. Because at least the children are materially well taken care of. It's not sufficient. Parenting is much more, but at least that much is taken care of. So yes, so in that sense, Rajoguna, which has a certain level of even material responsibility, there is some sattva in it, and that is desirable from this world's perspective. Thank you. Yes, you want to add something?
Can you explain that again? How to choose what is appropriate?
So what is appropriate and what is disproportionate? I think that will depend on what is the big thing for us and what is the small thing for us. That is something which each individual has to decide. So for example, when Prabhupada was staying at the house of Gopal and Sally Agarwal, when he came to Butler, Pennsylvania, at that time they had only one fridge and they would keep meat in that fridge. In fact, they would keep not just meat, but the most anti-devotional form of meat, that is beef. They had a baby and they would feed, the idea was that babies need proteins, so they would feed their baby liquefied beef to get the proteins for the baby. So that was their idea. And she had some understanding that, that Swamiji is an Indian, Swamiji is a vegetarian. So she apologized to Prabhupada, Swamiji, I have only one fridge and I'm sorry, we have to keep the same food here. What does Prabhupada's reply? Think nothing of it. Think nothing of it. Now, after an ISKCON temple was established, and if Prabhupada found even egg over there, Prabhupada would have assumed the Narsimha Rupa, isn't it? Ugra Narsimha Rupa. So the point is that at different times, what is appropriate? The Prabhupada soon saw that the Sally and Gopalagal, they were not really interested in becoming devotees. They had just done a favor to their father or father-in-law and had hosted him over here. When Prabhupada saw that they are not interested in becoming devotees, Prabhupada was not interested in pushing them. And it's just a transitional place where I'm going to stay for some time. So let me not create much disturbance over here. Let me tolerate this. So based on what is the kind of service that we are trying to do, based on that, we will have to decide that what I should tolerate and what I should not tolerate. What is a big thing, what is a small thing. So if we are going to a program where there are completely new people, and then say in Western outreach, whenever I started going, boys and girls often sit together, men and women sit together. When I went for one program, I saw there were like 20 students and 10 chairs. This was in America. And it's like on every chair, the girl was sitting on the lap of the boy. I was taken aback. I had not seen it. I grew up in a very conservative brahmacharya ashram in India. And from there, I went to America. I said, so the devotee who came with me, he understood. He said, this is the way it is over here. So, okay, I gave the class and I came, why do we tolerate this? He said, this is the way people will come here. And he says, we don't encourage or allow this if they come to our temples, even if they come to our youth center. But this is a program in the college. In the college, they have given us permission. In the college, when they have given us permission, we can't impose our norms over there. Now, if it's our youth center, we can have our norms. If we have our temples, certainly we have our norms. So the idea is that, when we are going there, our primary purpose is not to teach them the etiquette of Krishna consciousness, isn't it? Or even the etiquette of Sattva-Guna, whatever. There, it is just to give them some basic attraction or appreciation by which they'll come for some further programs. So then if our purpose is clear, then, okay, if this is my purpose, then this same thing would be a big thing in the temple. Something really worth doing a tandav in the temple if it happens. But here, it could be a small thing. So we have to use our intelligence to remind ourselves, what is the purpose I am here? What is the big thing? What is the small thing? So fanaticism often happens when something which is a small thing, we make it into a very big thing. And we say, it's not a small thing, it's a big thing. Yeah, it may be a big thing, but maybe here it is not a big thing. Here it is not a big thing. I remember one devotee went from India to America, and he was telling, Grahasthas, they have their deities. Now, America, from India's perspective, we think it's like very prosperous and very comfortable place, which is true. But in America, it's very difficult to get any kind of paid labor to assist. They have like minimum wage requirements, and it's almost $15 or $17 even for somebody to come and clean your house. So the point is that everybody's very hard pressed for time. So in a home, when devotees had deities, they would dress the deities maybe once in 15 days, and that's quite okay. They may not even be able to do Mangal Aarti every day. They would offer some bhoga, they're not able to cook many times. Even devotees, their life is so fast, they may not be able to cook every day. And this devotee went and he started speaking to everyone, that if you are not cooking every day, why are you having deities in your home also? You should cook proper meal and give to Krishna. And the only thing that happened after that was that people just stopped coming to the temple. Even Indians. I said, if this is what you're going to speak to us, this is not practical for us. And then the temple president who had invited this devotee to come, the temple president was talking with me, I don't know what has happened. So I was staying at one devotee's house and I asked the devotee, if this is the expectation that, we have to, now we may say cook every day for a devotee, cook for the Lord, that's a basic expectation. But they said, we don't cook for ourselves also. We don't have time to cook. And now is that an ideal situation? Of course it's not an ideal situation. But if somebody's in that situation, what is more important? For them to have deities at home, is it more important? Or for them to get so busy in serving the deity that they can't chant the 16 rounds, that they can't come to the temple? What is more important? So that understanding of what is more important, what is less important, gaining that is very important. And that often that requires understanding where people are at. So often people become intolerant because they don't spend time understanding where people are at. Okay, this is right, this is wrong. This is to be done, this is not to be done. But if you understand where people are coming from, then it's easier. Okay, thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, towards the end of the class, you mentioned the example of a person who, in a hot condition, if his body is sweaty, he should go under a fan and focus on the big thing. So my question is, we come with a certain nature of the gross body and the subtle body. So now my question is particularly related to the subtle body. From your class, my understanding is that the spheres of tolerance based on one's, it is very much dependent on one's internal subtle nature. So I wanted to understand by practicing the different points that you were explaining, can the sphere of tolerance be changed? Because it seems to be difficult to change the subtle nature. It's not very easy. So can it be changed?
I was trying to find this verse, easy for this. So this is Dhruva Maharaj's pastime, where Narad Muni is appreciating Dhruva, 4:8:26. Aho teja kshatriyanam man bhangam amrusyatam balopyayam rida datte yat samatur asadvachaha. So he's saying how great, how wonderful are the kshatriyas, that mana bhangam amrusyatam, that they cannot tolerate dishonor. Now we say we should tolerate. And he's saying how wonderful are the Kshatriyas that they cannot tolerate dishonor. So what is going on over here? See, everybody has their psychophysical nature. And Narad Muni initially tried to tell Dhruva, you are just a small child. The children fight, children quarrel, but then they forget their quarrel. So you go back home. And if you think you are not a child, then evolved saints, they also don't take honor, dishonor seriously. You go back home. So Dhruva replies very humbly but firmly. He says, your words are true, but they don't apply to me. He says, I am feeling terribly wounded right now. If you can help me to gain a kingdom bigger than my father's, then please guide me. Otherwise, please let me go my way. So the point is that Kshatriyas, when it is said they cannot tolerate dishonor, the way the Kshatriya nature is used for dharma is not by telling them tolerate dishonor. It is by inspiring them to act in honorable ways and to avoid acting in dishonorable ways. So that's why for Kshatriyas, if I give a word, I have to keep a word. What is that Hindi saying? Prana jaye par vachan na jaye. So like that the idea is that is the nature. If somebody can't tolerate, we can't force them to tolerate. So, but then that capacity to not tolerate is used in a constructive direction. So will it change with time, with purification? I'm not sure. I talked with different devotees about this. Say I talked with Bhurujan Prabhu once about this, that he said that does spiritual advancement change our nature? So if somebody is more like an introvert, will they become an extrovert? If somebody has a particular way of functioning, will their way of functioning change? So he told me that basically till 40, 45, you have a lot of Rajoguna in your body. So you want to fight against your nature to do that which is popular, even in the devotee community. Like book distributors are praised. If some managers or fundraisers are praised, you build such a big temple. So he says you want to fight against your nature, not necessarily to do what will please Krishna, but what will give you praise in the devotee community. Now we can say that is also pleasing to Krishna. That's why devotees are praising us, but it's not always the same thing, isn't it? But he says beyond 40, 45, you get tired of fighting against your nature. And you just focus on serving Krishna the way Krishna has made you. So that gave me a lot of peace and perspective when he told me that sometimes it's just that. So he was in Singapore, he was in Hong Kong, he was there. He was managing a yatra. We were read My Glorious Master and other books. But then eventually, he is more of an intellectual, he's more of a teacher, he's more of a writer. So he said, I did a service as a manager, but this was my nature. And of course, he's devoted to Krishna. That's his pure spirit. There's a pure purpose over there. So I'm not sure whether the nature will ever change. Is it possible? Definitely, anything is possible. But we shouldn't necessarily hold ourselves or others' spiritual advancement or assess others or our spiritual advancement based on how much somebody is able to go beyond their nature. It is more on how much dedicated they are to Krishna. How much are they dedicated to the service of Krishna? So somebody may choose, okay, I am a teacher, that's what I am going to do. I don't want to go into any teaching administration. But as a teacher, how dedicated are they to the craft? How much do they try to study scripture themselves? How much do they try to come up with newer and newer ways to explain scripture, better ways to communicate? How much are they concerned for the students' understanding? So, if we have that attitude, then whatever nature we have, we'll be able to use in Krishna's service. So, some things we may not be able to tolerate. Then, like say, some devotees may just they are a little harsh in their speech. Now, to some extent, that may decrease with time. But there are some people who are just blunt speakers. They're not necessarily harsh, but they're blunt. And some people are more strategic, more diplomatic in their speech. Now, should in the name of strong preaching, a diplomatic speaker become a blunt speaker? Or should in the name of being mature, a blunt speaker become a diplomatic speaker? Well, if it is possible, if we can for the service of Krishna, that is good. But if somebody can't, then maybe it is best that they take services accordingly. Somebody is a very blunt speaker, maybe they should not be in devotee care. Isn't it that? Maybe they can be managers, but if their service is devotee care, that may not work over there. So we may have to find the service that works according to our nature. Now, somebody who is a very diplomatic kind of speaker. Now, I'm not saying diplomatic in the sense of deceptive. They're diplomatic in the sense that they have that sense of time, place, circumstance. Now, they may be more suited for certain services. They may not be suited for some other services. So, to some extent, our expectation of what bhakti can change. We may say bhakti can change everything. Yes, that is true. We may have certain expectation. But then, that kind of expectation comes from the notion that our present nature is unfavorable for Krishna Bhakti. But it doesn't have to be like that, isn't it? It is not that the day we came to Krishna, that is the day Krishna started acting in my life. And Krishna was not acting at all before that. Krishna was acting in my life, even in previous lives, even this life. So the kind of upbringing I had, the kind of parents I had, the kind of school and college I went to, I could just dismiss it all as Maya, and all that is useless, and now my real life has begun after I came to Krishna. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But another way is that through all those situations also Krishna was preparing me to come to Him. And what I have acquired from my past, much of it could be conditioning which I have to give up. But much of it could also be certain aptitudes, certain attitudes that can be used in Krishna's service. Okay? So thank you very much. Okay, yes, Mataji, please. You want to add something? Yeah, they're behind.
Thank you. That's very, very nice discussion. Unfortunately, it's time to stop, but I was thinking that the main thing that changes by the practice of Krishna consciousness is to turn from being self-centered to being Krishna-centered. That's the main revolution which has to happen. And so naturally, if we become less selfish and we become Krishna-centered and dedicated to Krishna and all, so naturally there should be many positive changes as well. So we can expect that, not that by practicing Krishna consciousness we don't change at all. There will be some changes due to this very change that, we start seeing a bigger picture, we start accepting Krishna's will. So naturally there will be many changes, in one sense, in the nature also. But definitely a complete change in the total nature, that will require going beyond the 3 gunas. So that's like a very, very high level of advancement when we may not be influenced at all by the acquired nature that we have.
Yes.
And I just wanted to give an example. One time I was in the Delhi temple many, many years ago. And I came out and there was one devotee there. He was a GBC. And the first time in my life I met him. And he was just about to leave the temple. And he was red angry. He was mad. He was like red angry about I don't know what, something. And I was thinking, wow, and he's a GBC, how can he be like this? I was a very new person, and I was thinking, oh, what is this, And then over the years, naturally, many, many years passed, and so many times I came in touch with that person, and to realize, as you said, how dedicated, how everything like that. But there was a tendency towards anger in that person, which is there even today. So it's not always going like fully, but hopefully people learn to use it properly. That's the idea of Krishna consciousness, that everything, all the qualities are there on the material platform, and they are also there on the spiritual platform. How they become spiritual is when they are used for Krishna and they are related to Krishna, and the mind is connected to Krishna.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's a big change. It's a huge change. But yes, everybody has a different nature, and we are meant to use our nature in the service of Krishna. So we will not change 100%, but definitely there are some nasty sides should go away.
Definitely, yeah.
It should go away. We cannot just keep it. It has to go, because otherwise, what is the difference between us and a materialist? A devotee is basically. It means sad-achar, that his behavior will become good, So there will be variants,
Yeah.
And we don't lose the whole conditioning like that, but at least we have to become good. Sadhu means good. So there has to be a progress towards good. Somehow or other, something has to progress.
So it's like within the Swabhava, just to complete that point, complement that. So in Swabhava, in nature, there is vritti and there is vasana. So vritti is basically like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya. This is the vritti. Vasana is kama, krodha, lobha, moha. Now, in this one sense, you can very easily categorize this. But in real life, it may be difficult a little bit. So that means, say, Kshatriyas, they may have a certain level of krodha within them. And that may not go completely, as much as it may go in a Brahman. But like, say, even somebody is a blunt speaker, if they are a devotee, even their blunt speaking needs to be within some boundaries. Like sometimes in the name of blunt speaking, people may use foul words, people may use swear words, people may use obscene words. As devotees, cannot be doing that. If somebody is a devotee, they may get angry and they may yell. But even if you yell at someone, then it has to be within certain boundaries. So change has definitely required. And if that is not happening, then we can assume that something is deficient. So it is, if somebody is having a huge amount of anger issues, and if that does not decrease, then there is something deficient in the practice of Krishna Bhakti. But it is not necessary that that person will become completely conciliatory. Like take an example, if you see Yudhishthira and Bhima, both are devotees. But Yudhishthira is more like a Kshatriya Brahmana. He's a Kshatriya, but he has much more of Brahmana nature. Any situation is there, okay, let's try to resolve it peacefully. Bhima is more like Kshatriya, Kshatriya squared. any issue is itching for a fight. Now he may listen. If Yudhishthira said let's not fight, he may listen to it. But his natural is he will want to fight. So both of them are devoted. But it's not that Yudhishthira becomes like Bhima or Bhima becomes like Yudhishthira. So Arjuna often has to be the balancing act between the two of them sometimes. So yes, definitely some major changes have to be there. Otherwise, we cannot just say that, oh, this is my nature. If somebody keeps lying habitually and say, lying is my nature. No, you cannot say lying is your nature. I can't change that. Yes, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande.